The sun was just beginning to rise over the skyline of downtown Chicago, casting a golden glow through the towering glass windows of Technova Solutions. The office buzzed with its usual morning energy, employees sipping coffee, typing furiously on their keyboards and exchanging quick greetings as they settled into their workstations. It was an ordinary day for most, but for Marcus Thompson it would become anything but. Marcus had built Technova from the ground up. Starting in a tiny garage with nothing more than a laptop and a dream, he turned his passion for technology into one of the fastest-growing companies in the industry. His story was the stuff of legends, a black man rising against all odds in a world where opportunities were often stacked against him. Yet despite his success, Marcus remained humble. He didn't flaunt his wealth or status. Instead, he preferred blending in with his team, wearing casual clothes and chatting with employees like they were old friends. That morning, Marcus decided to visit the company's headquarters unannounced. He wanted to catch up with some of the staff and see how things were running without prior notice. After parking his car in the lot across the street, he walked toward the building, his leather jacket catching the breeze. As he entered the sleek lobby, he felt a sense of pride wash over him. This place wasn't just an office. It was a testament to years of hard work, sleepless nights, and unwavering determination. The reception area was immaculate, with polished marble floors reflecting the soft light from overhead chandeliers. A large screen displayed the company logo, accompanied by a slideshow of recent achievements. Behind the desk sat Sarah, the new receptionist. She had joined the company only 2 weeks earlier, fresh out of college and eager to make a good impression. Her blonde hair was neatly tied back and she wore a crisp blazer that screamed professionalism. However, her experience with corporate culture was still limited, and she hadn't yet familiarized herself with every face in the company directory. As Marcus approached the desk, Sarah glanced up briefly before returning her attention to the computer screen. "Can I help you?" she asked, her tone polite but distant. Marcus smiled warmly. "Hi there," he said, leaning slightly on the counter. "I'm here to see someone. I think I'll just head upstairs." Sarah frowned, looking at him skeptically. "Do you have an appointment? We don't allow visitors without prior clearance." Marcus chuckled softly, finding her diligence amusing. "Oh, I don't need an appointment," he replied lightly. "I'm Marcus Thompson. I founded this company." For a moment, Sarah stared at him blankly. Then her expression shifted, from confusion to disbelief and finally outright dismissal. "Right," she said, rolling her eyes ever so slightly. "And I'm the Queen of England. Look, sir, if you're trying to pull some kind of stunt, I suggest you leave before I call security." Her words hung in the air like a heavy cloud. Marcus blinked, taken aback by her response. He hadn't expected this kind of reaction, not here, not in his own company. For a brief second, he considered pulling out his ID or calling someone to confirm his identity. But something stopped him. Maybe it was the look in her eyes, a mix of skepticism and condescension, or perhaps it was the realization that arguing wouldn't change her mind. Whatever it was, Marcus chose not to push further. Instead, he straightened up, maintaining his calm demeanor. "All right," he said simply, nodding once. "Have a good day." With that, he turned and headed toward the elevators, leaving behind a puzzled Sarah who couldn't shake the feeling that she might have made a mistake. Unbeknownst to her, the ripple effects of this interaction were about to spread far beyond the confines of the lobby. Employees who recognized Marcus immediately noticed the unusual tension as he stepped into the elevator. Whispers began circulating almost instantly. "Did you hear what happened downstairs? Was that really Marcus? What did Sarah say to him?" By mid-morning, the entire office knew about the incident. Some laughed nervously, others shook their heads in disbelief, and a few grew visibly upset. Meanwhile, Sarah remained oblivious to the growing storm around her. She continued answering calls and greeting visitors, completely unaware that her dismissive remark had ignited a chain reaction that would soon spiral out of control. Little did anyone know, this seemingly minor encounter would mark the beginning of a crisis that would test the very foundations of Technova Solutions and leave lasting scars on everyone involved. As Marcus stepped into the elevator, he couldn't help but replay the receptionist's words in his mind. "Get lost before I call security." The phrase echoed with a sting that wasn't entirely unfamiliar to him. Over the years, he had faced countless moments like this, times when people underestimated him or dismissed him based on assumptions they made at first glance. But this was different. This wasn't just some stranger on the street. This was his own company, a place where he should feel respected and acknowledged. The elevator doors slid open, revealing the bustling floor of Technova's main operations. Employees moved about with purpose, their faces lit by the glow of computer screens. As soon as Marcus stepped out, a young developer named Emily spotted him and waved enthusiastically. "Morning, Marcus," she called out, her voice carrying across the room. Others quickly followed suit, greeting him warmly as he made his way through the workspace. Despite the cheerful atmosphere, Marcus couldn't shake off the earlier encounter. He tried to focus on conversations with his team, asking about ongoing projects and offering feedback. Yet every so often he caught snippets of hushed whispers nearby. At first he assumed it was typical office chatter, but then he noticed something unusual. A few employees glancing toward him with expressions that ranged from concern to disbelief. It didn't take long for him to realize what they were talking about. By late morning, the story had spread like wildfire. Someone must have overheard Sarah's comment and shared it with others, sparking a chain reaction of gossip. Some employees approached Marcus cautiously, unsure whether to bring up the incident directly. One brave intern named Jake finally broke the ice during a coffee break. "Hey, Marcus," he began hesitantly, clutching his cup tightly. "I heard, well, there's a rumor going around about what happened downstairs. Is it true?" Marcus paused, considering how much to share. He didn't want to make a big deal out of it, especially since he had chosen not to address the situation with Sarah herself. "Yeah, it's true," he admitted with a sigh. "I introduced myself and she didn't believe me. No harm done, though. These things happen." Jake nodded slowly, clearly uncomfortable but also visibly relieved that Marcus wasn't upset. Word of his calm response spread quickly, earning him even more admiration from his staff. However, not everyone reacted with such understanding. A senior manager named Lisa pulled Marcus aside later that afternoon, her brow furrowed with worry. "Marcus, we need to talk about this," she said firmly. "This isn't just a harmless misunderstanding. If word gets out, it could hurt our reputation." At first, Marcus brushed off her concerns. "It's fine, Lisa," he assured her. "These things blow over. Besides, I don't think anyone outside the company will care." But Lisa wasn't convinced. "You're underestimating how serious this is," she pressed. "People are already recording videos and taking screenshots of Sarah at her desk. Someone is bound to leak this online, and when they do, it won't just reflect badly on her. It'll reflect on all of us." Sure enough, by early afternoon, the whispers turned into outright murmurs. Employees gathered in small clusters, discussing the incident with growing intensity. Some defended Sarah, arguing that she was new and couldn't be expected to recognize every face in a company as large as Technova. Others criticized her harshly, accusing her of being rude and dismissive. Debates erupted in hallways and break rooms, dividing opinions and creating an underlying tension that hadn't existed before. Meanwhile, Sarah remained blissfully unaware of the storm brewing around her. She continued answering calls and assisting visitors, oblivious to the fact that her name had become a topic of heated discussion throughout the building. That changed abruptly when a colleague named Tom approached her desk with a concerned expression. "Sarah," he said quietly, leaning closer to avoid being overheard. "Do you know who Marcus Thompson is?" She blinked, momentarily confused. "Isn't he the CEO?" she replied, her voice tinged with uncertainty. Tom nodded grimly. "Yeah, he is. And guess what? He stopped by earlier today. You told him to get lost." Sarah's face drained of color. For a moment she sat frozen, her fingers hovering above the keyboard. Then panic set in. "Wait, what?" she stammered. "That guy? The one in the leather jacket?" Oh my God. Her mind raced as fragments of the morning came rushing back. The man who claimed to be Marcus, his casual demeanor, her sarcastic remark. How could she have been so blind? Why hadn't she double-checked? The weight of her mistake hit her like a ton of bricks, and tears welled up in her eyes. I didn't mean to, I swear I didn't know. Tom placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. I believe you, he said gently. But you need to fix this. Go to HR right now and explain what happened. Maybe they can help you figure out how to apologize. With trembling hands, Sarah grabbed her notebook and headed toward the Human Resources Department. Along the way, she passed several coworkers, who avoided making eye contact, their silence speaking volumes. By the time she reached the HR office, her nerves were frayed, and her confidence was shattered. Inside, she found herself sitting across from Michelle, the head of HR, who listened patiently as Sarah recounted the events of the morning. Her voice cracked with emotion as she described the encounter and expressed her remorse. I'm so sorry, she repeated over and over again. I never meant to disrespect him. Please, can you help me apologize? Michelle nodded sympathetically but warned her that apologizing might not be enough. This is a delicate situation, she explained. Marcus is a highly respected leader, both inside and outside the company. What you said reflects poorly, not only on you but on Technova as a whole. We'll need to handle this carefully. Feeling overwhelmed, Sarah agreed to follow whatever steps Michelle recommended. Later that day, she was escorted to Marcus's office, where she stood nervously outside the door, rehearsing her apology in her head. When she finally knocked and entered, Marcus looked up from his desk, his expression unreadable. Mr. Thompson, she began, her voice shaking. I am so sorry for what I said earlier. I had no idea who you were, and I completely misunderstood the situation. Please forgive me. Marcus studied her for a moment, his gaze steady but not unkind. Thank you for apologizing, he said eventually, his tone measured. I appreciate your honesty. Let's move forward from here. Though his words offered some relief, Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that the damage had already been done. As she left his office, she knew that regaining trust, both within the company and beyond, would be an uphill battle, and unbeknownst to her, the worst was yet to come. The next morning, Sarah arrived at work feeling a mix of dread and determination. She had spent the entire night replaying the incident in her mind, cringing at every detail. Her conversation with Marcus had been brief but polite, and while he hadn't seemed angry, his calm demeanor left her unsettled. It was as if he wasn't just forgiving her. It was as if he expected this kind of behavior, as though it was something he'd encountered countless times before. That realization weighed heavily on her. As she settled into her chair at the reception desk, Sarah noticed an unusual quietness in the office. Employees moved about their usual routines, but there was an undercurrent of tension in the air. Conversations were hushed, and people avoided eye contact with her. The friendly smiles she had received during her first 2 weeks on the job were gone, replaced by awkward glances and whispered exchanges. Even Tom, who had tried to comfort her the day before, seemed distant when she greeted him. It wasn't until mid-morning that Sarah discovered why everyone seemed so uneasy. A notification popped up on her phone, a message from a coworker named Rachel who worked in marketing. Attached to the text was a link to a video that had already racked up thousands of views. Did you see this? Rachel's message read, Someone leaked footage of what happened yesterday. Sarah's heart sank as she clicked the link. The video opened to show a grainy recording of Sarah sitting at her desk, visibly upset, talking to Michelle from HR. Though the audio was muffled, subtitles had been added, summarizing their conversation. The title of the post read, Receptionist tells Black CEO to get lost Technova's latest scandal. Her hands trembled as she scrolled through the comments section. Hundreds of users had chimed in, many expressing outrage over the incident. Some criticized Sarah for her lack of professionalism, while others pointed fingers at Technova for hiring someone clearly unprepared for the role. But the most painful comments were those calling out racial bias. This is exactly why systemic racism still exists, one commenter wrote. People refused to see black leaders as equals. Sarah felt like the ground beneath her feet had crumbled. She hadn't intended to offend anyone, let alone spark a national debate about race and discrimination. Yet here she was, at the center of a firestorm, her face plastered across social media alongside accusations she never imagined would be leveled against her. Back in the office, the fallout was equally severe. Employees gathered around computer screens, watching the video and discussing its implications. Senior management called an emergency meeting to address the growing crisis. Lisa, the senior manager who had warned Marcus earlier, stood at the front of the conference room, her expression grim. "We have a serious problem on our hands," she began. "This isn't just about Sarah or Marcus anymore. This is about how we're perceived as a company. If we don't handle this properly, it could destroy everything we've built." Marcus listened silently from the corner of the room, his arms crossed. He hadn't anticipated the situation escalating to this extent, and while part of him felt sympathy for Sarah, another part of him recognized the bigger picture. This wasn't just about one person's mistake. It was a reflection of deeper issues within corporate culture. For years, he had fought to break barriers and prove himself in an industry dominated by privilege and bias. Now, his own company was being scrutinized for failing to live up to the values it claimed to uphold. Outside the office, the controversy continued to gain momentum. Hashtags like #Respect Black CEOs and Accountability, a Tech Nova began trending on Twitter, drawing attention from journalists and activists alike. News outlets picked up the story, framing it as yet another example of systemic racism in professional settings. Opinion pieces flooded online platforms, with some praising Marcus for his grace under pressure and others condemning Technova for allowing such an incident to occur. Meanwhile, Sarah became the reluctant face of the scandal. Strangers recognized her on the street, pointing and whispering. Friends stopped responding to her messages, and family members urged her to stay off social media altogether. Her once promising career now felt like a sinking ship, and she struggled to find any silver linings in the chaos. Amidst the public backlash, Marcus found himself grappling with conflicting emotions. On one hand, he empathized with Sarah's predicament. He knew what it was like to be judged harshly based on appearances or assumptions. But on the other hand, he couldn't ignore the broader significance of the incident. As the founder of Technova, he had always strived to create a workplace where diversity and inclusion weren't just buzzwords. They were core principles. This scandal threatened to undo all of that progress. Determined to take control of the narrative, Marcus decided to issue a statement. Sitting down at his desk, he drafted a message addressing the public. "What happened yesterday was unfortunate, but it highlights a critical issue that we must confront as a society," he wrote. "Discrimination, whether intentional or not, has no place in our workplaces. At Technova, we are committed to fostering an environment where everyone feels valued and respected. Moving forward, we will implement measures to ensure that incidents like this do not happen again." The statement was met with mixed reactions. Some praised Marcus for his leadership and willingness to turn the situation into a teachable moment. Others accused him of downplaying the severity of the incident, arguing that his response lacked accountability. Despite the criticism, Marcus remained steadfast in his belief that real change required action, not just words. Internally, the company scrambled to contain the damage. HR organized mandatory training sessions on unconscious bias and cultural sensitivity, inviting experts to lead workshops for employees at all levels. Managers held one-on-one meetings with their teams, encouraging open dialogue about the challenges facing minority professionals in corporate environments. Meanwhile, Sarah attended counseling sessions provided by the company, trying to process the emotional toll of the past few days. Though these efforts helped ease some of the immediate tension, the long-term effects of the scandal were undeniable. Trust between employees had been shaken, and morale plummeted as staff members questioned whether Technova truly prioritized inclusivity. Clients began reaching out to express concerns about partnering with a company embroiled in such controversy. Competitors seized the opportunity to poach top talent, luring away disillusioned workers with promises of better opportunities elsewhere. For Sarah, the experience became a turning point. While she initially considered resigning to escape the scrutiny, she ultimately decided to stay, at least for now. With guidance from HR and support from a few compassionate colleagues, she vowed to learn from her mistakes and become an advocate for positive change. She started attending diversity workshops and volunteering for community initiatives aimed at promoting equality in the workplace. Slowly but surely, she began rebuilding her reputation, one small step at a time. As the days turned into weeks, the initial frenzy surrounding the scandal began to die down, but the lessons it revealed lingered, forcing everyone involved to confront uncomfortable truths about bias, privilege, and responsibility. For Marcus, the incident served as a stark reminder of the work still needed to dismantle systemic barriers, not just within Teknova, but across industries worldwide. And for Sarah, it marked the beginning of a journey toward growth, humility, and redemption. The aftermath of the scandal hit Teknova like a tidal wave, sweeping away any semblance of normalcy within its walls. The once vibrant office buzzed not with innovation and collaboration, but with tension and whispers. Employees who had previously worked seamlessly together now found themselves divided, their trust in leadership and each other shaken to the core. For many, the incident wasn't just about Sarah or Marcus. It was symbolic of deeper cracks in the foundation of the company's culture. In the days following the viral video, internal meetings became battlegrounds for heated discussions. Some employees argued that Sarah's actions were an isolated case of ignorance, while others saw it as evidence of systemic issues that had been ignored for too long. During one particularly contentious session, a junior developer named Jamal stood up and addressed the room. "This isn't just about one person messing up," he said firmly, his voice cutting through the murmurs. "It's about how we treat people who don't fit the mold. How many times have we seen someone dismissed because they didn't look or act the way we expected? This is bigger than Sarah." His words struck a nerve. Many nodded in agreement, recalling instances where colleagues from minority backgrounds had faced subtle and sometimes blatant forms of discrimination. A senior engineer named Priya shared her own experience of being mistaken for an intern despite holding years of expertise. Another employee recounted how a black coworker's ideas were often overlooked until a white colleague repeated them, verbatim. These stories poured out like water breaking through a dam, exposing wounds that had festered silently for years. Amidst these revelations, Sarah became both a target and a symbol. To some, she represented everything wrong with corporate America: a lack of awareness, unchecked privilege, and implicit bias. To others, she was a scapegoat, bearing the brunt of frustrations that should have been directed at the system itself. Her presence in the office grew increasingly uncomfortable. Co-workers avoided sitting near her, and even routine interactions like handing over mail or scheduling appointments felt strained. HR intervened multiple times, attempting to mediate the situation. They encouraged open dialogue, organizing forums, where employees could voice their concerns without fear of retaliation. But these efforts only highlighted the depth of the divide. In one such forum, Lisa, the senior manager, posed a question to the group. "What do you think needs to change here?" The responses varied wildly, ranging from calls for stricter hiring practices to demands for transparency in promotions and pay equity. What was clear, however, was that no single solution would suffice. The problems ran deep, and addressing them required more than surface-level fixes. For Marcus, the pressure mounted exponentially. Shareholders began questioning his ability to lead during such a volatile time. Board meetings turned into interrogations, with members demanding answers about how the company planned to recover its tarnished reputation. One particularly vocal shareholder accused Marcus of mishandling the situation entirely. "You should have fired her immediately," the man snapped during a tense conference call. "Instead, you let this drag on, making us look weak and indecisive." Marcus clenched his jaw, resisting the urge to defend himself. He knew firing Sarah outright wouldn't solve anything. It would only reinforce the idea that individuals were solely responsible for systemic failures. Instead, he focused on finding meaningful ways to address the root causes of the issue. He met with consultants specializing in diversity and inclusion, poring over data and strategies to overhaul Technova's policies. Yet every step forward seemed to be met with resistance either from skeptical executives or employees wary of change. Internally, morale plummeted. Employees who had once prided themselves on working for a progressive, forward-thinking company now questioned whether those values were genuine. Turnover rates spiked as disillusioned staff members handed in their resignations, citing the toxic environment as their primary reason for leaving. Those who stayed did so out of necessity rather than loyalty, their enthusiasm replaced by cautious detachment. Externally, the damage proved equally devastating. Major clients began pulling contracts, citing concerns about partnering with a company embroiled in controversy. "We can't afford to associate ourselves with this kind of drama," one client representative explained during a terse phone call. Competitors seized the opportunity to poach top talent, offering lucrative deals and promises of better workplace cultures. Within weeks, Technova's revenue dropped significantly, forcing the company to implement cost-cutting measures that further demoralized the remaining workforce. As the crisis unfolded, Sarah found herself caught in the eye of the storm. Despite attending mandatory training sessions and participating in team-building exercises, she struggled to regain her footing. Her attempts to apologize publicly were met with mixed reactions. Some appreciated her willingness to take responsibility, while others dismissed her efforts as insincere or self-serving. The weight of public scrutiny left her emotionally drained, and she often retreated to the restroom during breaks, tears streaming down her face. One afternoon, as she sat alone in the break room nursing a cup of tea, Michelle from HR joined her. Sensing Sarah's distress, Michelle offered a few words of encouragement. "I know this has been incredibly hard for you," she said gently, "but remember, growth comes from discomfort. You've already taken steps to learn and improve. That's something to be proud of." Sarah nodded, though doubt lingered in her eyes. "I just wish I could turn back time," she whispered. "If I could redo that morning." Michelle placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "You can't change the past, but you can shape the future. Keep showing up, keep learning, and keep advocating for positive change. That's all anyone can ask of you." Though Michelle's words provided some comfort, Sarah knew the road ahead would be long and difficult. She couldn't undo the harm she had caused, nor could she erase the scars left on the company. But she vowed to use this experience as a catalyst for personal transformation, determined to become part of the solution rather than the problem. Meanwhile, Marcus grappled with his own sense of responsibility. As the CEO, he bore the ultimate accountability for the company's shortcomings. Yet he also recognized that true progress required collective effort. He began hosting town hall meetings, inviting employees to share their thoughts and suggestions openly. Slowly, a glimmer of hope emerged as people started engaging in honest conversations about race, privilege, and accountability. Though the scars of the scandal would never fully heal, they served as a reminder of the work still needed to create a truly inclusive workplace. For Technova, this marked the beginning of a painful yet necessary journey toward redemption, a journey that would test everyone's resilience, empathy, and commitment to change. The fallout from the scandal continued to ripple outward, extending far beyond the confines of Technova's headquarters. What had started as an isolated incident at the reception desk now threatened to dismantle years of hard work and reputation building. The company's image, once synonymous with innovation and inclusivity, was being shredded piece by piece in the court of public opinion, and its financial stability was crumbling under the weight of lost trust. Clients, who had previously praised Technova for its cutting-edge solutions and forward-thinking approach, began distancing themselves rapidly. One of the first major blows came when a Fortune 500 client, a cornerstone of Technova's revenue stream, sent a terse email terminating their partnership. "Given recent events," the message read, "we are concerned about your organization's ability to maintain a respectful and professional workplace environment." Similar emails followed, each one more disheartening than the last. By the end of the month, nearly 30% of Technova's contracts had been canceled or suspended, leaving gaping holes in the company's income projections. Competitors wasted no time capitalizing on the chaos. Rival firms launched aggressive recruitment campaigns targeting Technova employees, dangling attractive salary packages and promises of better workplace cultures. For many disillusioned workers, these offers proved irresistible. Key members of Marcus's leadership team quietly handed in their resignations, citing burnout and frustration over the lack of meaningful progress in addressing systemic issues. Even top performers, who might have otherwise stayed loyal, began jumping ship, taking valuable expertise and institutional knowledge with them. The exodus created a domino effect within the company. Projects stalled as teams scrambled to fill vacant roles. Deadlines were missed, sparking further dissatisfaction among remaining clients. Morale plummeted even further as overworked employees struggled to pick up the slack. The once thriving office atmosphere devolved into a tense, anxiety-ridden environment where every interaction felt fraught with uncertainty. For Marcus, watching his company unravel before his eyes was nothing short of devastating. He had poured his heart and soul into building Technova, sacrificing sleepless nights and personal relationships to turn it into a beacon of success. Yet, now, he found himself questioning whether all that effort had been worth it. Every day brought new challenges, angry shareholders demanding answers, journalists hounding him for statements, and former colleagues accusing him of failing to protect the very values he claimed to champion. One particularly grueling afternoon, Marcus sat alone in his corner office, staring at a stack of resignation letters piled neatly on his desk. Each envelope represented not just a departing employee, but also a fragment of the dream he had worked so hard to build. His phone buzzed incessantly with notifications, emails, texts, calls, but he ignored them all, unable to muster the energy to respond. Instead, he leaned back in his chair, closing his eyes and letting the silence envelop him. When Lisa knocked softly on his door a few minutes later, Marcus barely registered her presence. She hesitated before stepping inside, clutching a folder filled with grim financial reports. "We need to talk," she said quietly, pulling up a chair across from him. Her tone was gentle but firm, betraying the urgency of the situation. Marcus sighed, opening his eyes to meet hers. "What now?" he asked wearily, already bracing himself for bad news. Lisa placed the folder on his desk, flipping it open to reveal graphs showing sharp declines in revenue and stock prices. "It's worse than we thought," she admitted. "If we don't stabilize things soon, we're looking at potential bankruptcy." The words hit Marcus like a punch to the gut. Bankruptcy? The mere suggestion seemed impossible. Technova had always been a symbol of resilience, a testament to overcoming adversity. But as he studied the numbers, reality sank in. Without immediate intervention, the company he had built from scratch could vanish entirely. Determined not to let that happen, Marcus sprang into action. He called an emergency meeting with his executive team, urging them to brainstorm solutions. Ideas flew around the room, ranging from drastic cost-cutting measures to bold marketing campaigns aimed at rebuilding the brand. Though none of the proposals offered a quick fix, they sparked a sense of urgency and collaboration that had been sorely lacking in recent weeks. Meanwhile, Sarah faced her own battles outside the boardroom. Having survived the initial wave of public backlash, she now dealt with the quieter, more insidious consequences of the scandal. Former friends stopped returning her calls, and acquaintances crossed the street to avoid running into her. At work, she remained an outsider, tolerated but never fully accepted. Even routine tasks, like answering phones or greeting visitors, felt like Herculean efforts, each interaction laced with anxiety over how she'd be perceived. To cope, Sarah threw herself into learning everything she could about diversity, equity, and inclusion. She attended workshops, read books, and sought mentorship from colleagues willing to guide her. Slowly, she began transforming her perspective, recognizing biases she hadn't realized existed within herself. While this newfound awareness didn't erase the pain of the past, it gave her hope that she could contribute positively moving forward. Back at the executive level, Marcus implemented sweeping changes designed to address the root causes of the scandal. He hired renowned consultants specializing in organizational culture to conduct audits and recommend improvements. Training programs focused on unconscious bias and cultural sensitivity became mandatory for all employees, from entry-level staff to senior management. Additionally, Marcus established a diversity advisory board tasked with ensuring accountability and transparency in decision-making processes. These initiatives earned cautious praise from advocacy groups and industry experts, who acknowledged the steps Technova was taking to rectify its mistakes. However, skepticism lingered. Critics argued that the changes were superficial, a band-aid solution to deeper systemic problems. Some questioned whether Marcus's actions stemmed from genuine commitment to equality or merely a desire to salvage the company's reputation. Despite the criticism, Marcus pressed on, driven by a renewed sense of purpose. He understood that rebuilding trust would take time, and that true change required sustained effort. In interviews and public appearances, he spoke candidly about the challenges facing marginalized professionals in corporate environments. His vulnerability resonated with audiences, humanizing him in ways that polished PR statements never could. Internally, the shifts began to show subtle signs of progress. Employees noticed a shift in tone during meetings, with leaders actively encouraging input from underrepresented voices. Initiatives aimed at promoting pay equity and career advancement opportunities gained traction, signaling a genuine effort to level the playing field. Though the journey remained arduous, there was a growing sense that Technova was finally confronting the issues head-on. By the end of the year, the company showed tentative signs of recovery. Revenue stabilized, thanks in part to new partnerships forged with organizations committed to ethical business practices. Stock prices rebounded slightly, buoyed by investor confidence in Marcus's leadership. Most importantly, morale began to improve as employees saw tangible evidence of change. Not perfect, but promising. Yet scars remained. The scandal had left indelible marks on everyone involved, forcing them to confront uncomfortable truths about privilege, bias, and responsibility. For Marcus, it served as a humbling reminder of the fragility of success and the importance of staying vigilant against complacency. For Sarah, it marked the beginning of a lifelong commitment to advocacy and growth. And for Technova as a whole, it underscored the enduring power of resilience, the ability to rise from failure stronger, wiser, and more determined than ever.